All right, that's Howard Stern, by the way. Howard Stern is well, you folks probably know him best by America's Got Talent. He's a judge on America's Got. I've seen the show a few times. I've fallen into the America's Got Talent trap where I've watched it a few times. It's actually, I don't think, a bad show. I think Howard Stern's actually pretty funny on it and actually quite enlightening. And he's a smart guy. There's a really funny movie about his life. I think it's called Private Parts. And it's a really funny movie. It's about his journey through radio. And, radio's not obscure. I wouldn't say, video killed the radio star. I'd say reality TV killed the video star. But, they say radio's dead. I think radio's sort of making a somewhat comeback in a way. So don't deter yourself from radio if you're not, if you want to do radio. He had it tough. All right, so today we're going to be going over the 5 elements of an interview analysis, okay? We're going to do this a few times throughout the semester. I'm going to tell you it's not the most exciting experiment in the world, not the most exciting activity, but you get in a way to learn how to do what we in the field call a form of rhetorical criticism, or even discourse analysis. Now, don't get scared by those words. Rhetorical criticism, all it is that we're breaking down the rhetoric of whatever we're seeing. We're actually analyzing it. We're picking it apart. A good way to think of rhetorical criticism is when we analyze speeches. I think Bill Clinton just gave a speech today on Obamacare and on how people need to support it. A lot of adjunct professors like me, we don't have health insurance. So if I'm working 30 hours plus hours, bless you, and then this SU decides, they tell SU through Obamacare, you need to now pay his health insurance because he's working 30 plus hours, which I do a week. So if I'm working 30 plus hours a week, then I'm considered full-time. I'm supposed to get benefits. Well, what do you think the university is going to do once that goes through? You think they're going to keep me at 30 hours? No. They're going to cut my classes and say, we'll just hire another adjunct professor and not give them health benefits. That's my one rant about Obamacare. I'm just like, what about us adjuncts? They're going to cut our time and I'm not going to get health insurance. So anyway, there are 5 elements you need to know. Setting, which I'm actually transferring to frame, soon to be frame, but for now we're just looking at setting, environment. 2 would be, I forget it. I came up with a model and I forget it. Oh, okay, topoi. Sorry. Topoi is just a fancy rhetoric term for topic. Interview content. What is the subject at hand? And we'll get to that. And then we have verbal interaction and nonverbal interactions, and they're on the same playing field. We'll get to that sort of. Nonverbal sometimes says more than verbals, believe it or not. And then we get to the final one, which is sex and gender, which is slowly turning into sort of multicultural discourse in a way. So instead of us just looking one-dimensionally at sort of gender and sex and how that might influence an interview, because it might not, let's look at the other multicultural elements at hand and other sort of cultural things taking place. So we'll get to those. It says in the notes you have to memorize these. You do not have to memorize these, okay? It's clearly I just went through them and I had a brain bubble for a minute. So the first element I'd like to start with is setting. Basically in the environment, okay? What is the totality of the environment in which the interview is taking place, okay? Is it intimate? Is it private? Is it public? Now, something might be intimate but public, okay? In the interview we're going to see is Lindsay Lohan with Oprah Winfrey, and they're talking about very sensitive things, okay? Level 2 questions, really what that have to do with their drug abuse, rehab, growing up in a dysfunctional family. It's an intimate interview, but it's being broadcasted to millions of people. So it's going out to a lot of people, and so it's intimate, but it's public. I mean, it's on YouTube. Anyone can see it. Set dynamics. Is it on a televised set? That makes a big deal, okay? What is the color? What is the makeup of the stage setting? I like to bring in, for those of you that know who Wendy Williams is, if you've ever seen her show, even if you don't like her, if you've ever seen her show, she's very flamboyant, very campy, very feminine, lots of pinks and purples, kind of like this color over here. And she's got a very cosmopolitan urban feel to her talk show set. I mean, there's a picture of the New York skyline in the background, signaling that her show broadcasts from New York. You know, when you used to watch the Oprah show back in the day, when I was a kid, there was a skyline of Chicago in the background because she was broadcasting from Chicago. So set dynamics say a lot. Also, for those of you interested in late night talk shows, okay, that desk, Jimmy Fallon, David Letterman, Jay Leno, okay? They have that desk that barricades them between the interviewee and themselves. That's saying a lot about one's power. You know, saying this is a dividing line, okay? I have the power in this interview. You have to sit there and listen and answer my questions. Okay, also color schemes, chair sitting and positioning. Again, on Wendy Williams, it's a couch. It's a couch here and a couch here, kind of kitty corner. And so it's very open. You can have a dialogue, okay? Not just sort of a debate or a dispute back and forth about something. All right, so chair and sitting positioning actually has a lot. So this is what you come into, or you would take into account if you were analyzing setting. All right, any questions about setting? You guys are good. Interview content. I put topoe for this because it fits with the communication studies vocabulary, and that's just a fancy word for interview content, okay, in this scenario, in this context. So what types of questions are asked? Are they probing? Are they open-ended? Okay, probing questions are very close-ended, sort of short, information-grabbing questions. Open-ended questions are very broad. They'll get you to speak freely and openly. You might expose more information that way, because a probing question might get you to talk a little bit too guarded in a way. We'll learn all about questions next week. Oof, that's a long lecture. Oof, I gotta cut that one down. This could also include the tone of the interview. Is it hostile? Is it genuine? Is it angry? Is it visceral? Is it nasty? Is it celebratory? Are we interviewing you about a new book that's coming out? You know, did you just write a new book and I'm interviewing you? You're on a little stop, a little tour, and you stop in my city and you sit down for an interview on my morning talk show, and we talk about your new book. Well, it's going to be a very flowery interview unless there's a little bit of scandal in that book. If you ever watch book interviews or interviews with people who are coming out with books, they jump right to the scandalous parts of the book. You know, Barbara Walters says that you had an affair with a U.S. senator back in the 70s. Okay, they jump right to that question, that scandal question. All right. Also, is it general? Or when you do your first major interviews, it's an informational interview. What's nice about that is you have a lot of room, flexibility to do whatever interview you really want, because you're just trying to gain information. Now, of course, the more creative it is, the more exciting the interview will be. But like you said, people are jumping in and wanting to be interviewed. I hope you find that along your journey as an interviewer, that people are coming to you, hey, can you interview me for this? Or, you know, I've got a really good story to tell you, or something like that. When you do your journalism article, and again, I know not all of you want to be journalists, so I know there is a new house and there is VPA, and we are a little different. Well, we are quite different. But CRS, I think it's important to realize that that you can do a news approach if you want. I mean, anyone can learn. I always say this: teleprompters are hard to read off of, but anyone can learn how to read off of them. It just takes some time. All right, verbal interactions is number 3. So, what is being spoken or uttered? I know that's a funny word, utter. So in verbal interactions, what is being spoken? This also contributes a little bit to the topic, all right, at hand, or the top line. So evaluate the interviewer and the interviewee. Don't just analyze the questions, analyze the answers. Don't just analyze the answers, analyze the questions, okay? Analyze both scenarios. Those of you that get stuck with verbal interaction as an element for the next activity, you're going to be writing a lot, but it's going to be kind of the same thing. It sort of becomes a pattern, and you'll pick up on that in several interviews that we do. Does the interviewee answer the questions with poise and confidence? Do they use jargon or slang or ideology? Okay, a lot of political interviews. We're going to be watching a movie about Sarah Palin in here. There's a lot of ideology going around in that movie that we need to focus on, especially during interviews. When Katie Couric asks her about her stance on abortion or terminating the pregnancy, ideology comes into play there. Also, repetition. I know that was something I very geekishly worked on in my master's thesis, but I focused on repetition a lot. Repetition says something. You're trying to emphasize something, or you're trying to dodge something. So repetition could signal some stuff. Also, intonation, pitch, and paralinguistics. That's just a fancy word for, am I going like this? Am I moving my voice all around? Am I huffing and puffing? Am I being dramatic? Am I sneezing? Okay, those are paralinguistics. And intonation, pitch, that's just going up and down. I like to tell the story of my experience at JFK Airport Customs. I had never been out of the country before. I went on a school trip to Copenhagen, Denmark with CRS grad students, and I'd never been out of the country to come into customs before. I was nervous. going through. It's not like I really had anything on me, like even that I had to get, pay tax on or anything because I didn't have any spending money. So I was broke. Surprise. And so this guy who was my customs officer who, you have to go and you have to answer a series of questions. I was so nervous. I don't know why. I felt like I was more nervous being asked those questions than I was going through those stupid, those god-awful machines that you have to, I always have to get my hands wiped when I go through security. I do not know why. Always have to get the only airport I haven't, well, there are 2 airports. Baltimore, I wasn't hand swiped, and in Copenhagen, I wasn't hand swiped. New York, I've been hand swiped. Syracuse, I'm always hand wiped. I don't know why. I don't get that. So trust me. But anyway, so I was all over the place with my intonation, pitch, and paralleling. I was all nervous and shaking and stuttering, and the guy was like, dude, you need to chill. Or something's up. And clearly, I got through, but he was really mean. So be aware of your pitch and intonation and others, because that's signal stuff. Non-verbal communication. Now I will say, from what I gather from most people that I've spoken to that have studied communication, either as an undergrad or a graduate, has always said that nonverbal communication was the most valuable class they ever took. All right, we offer nonverbal communication. They say that because nonverbals say a lot. They sometimes uncover what is not, basically uncover what is not being said in whatever speaking scenario you're in or interaction you're in. Our facial expressions, eye contact, and eye gaze mean something. Judge Judy, I think she's hilarious, and we do a little bit with her in here. But Judge Judy, she's always saying, look up here, look at my eyes. Or else she thinks you're lying. She's saying you're looking over there, you're looking at the floor, you're looking at the ceiling, what do you got to hide? Which I find interesting. Also, fashion, dress, apparel says a lot. I think back to the early mid-90s when I was in junior high, and I remember the grunge movement was really big. Okay, so flannel shirts and ripped jeans and that whole Seattle vibe, kind of, not really hippie, but sort of Northwest Seattle, Nirvana, Pearl Jam kind of stuff. Bless you. And I remember how my parents thought that was the worst thing ever. Oh my gosh, grunge is the worst thing ever. And then techno music came along, and then my sister got into the rave scene, and then that you could just figure out where that led to. But they had more to worry about with raves and club stuff than they had to worry about grunge music, I think. So grunge music is quite the opposite of dance music. But anyway, pauses and... So anyway, fashion and dress and apparel say something. You're making a statement by what you're wearing. If I would have loved to have shown up tonight in shorts and a t-shirt, but I have to sort of look like I'm presentable. And I don't do a very good job at it. But, pauses and silence. There's a lot of research out there in communication that studies pauses and silence. I know. It's very, how do you study, what is being silent saying? My partner always knows that I'm mad at him because I get quiet. I talk a lot, so I'll just shut up. If I'm in the car, I'll look out the window and not face him or something. And if I'm not driving, of course. So he knows something's up when I'm silent because I talk a lot. So if I'm silent, he knows something's up. Handshakes. In an employment interview, you always shake the person's hand, but you cannot, or women, you do not just jab your arm into someone, because some men are just like, bam, and the arm goes flying off. You're not doing that. And you can't be dainty about it. These sort of flexible, kind of, limp-wristed handshakes, if you will. You gotta be firm, which is just kind of common sense. But posture, are you sitting up? Are you slouched over? In employment interviews, it's so important that you keep your back straight up. And you don't look too stiff, but you look like you're actually, sitting correctly. Proximity of parties. Again, is there a desk or another prop available? I like to talk about tissues. I love when tissues come in the picture because that definitely confirms that the person is crying. Sometimes you don't know. Are they crying? And then sometimes you see the tear. So that's nonverbal. Any questions about nonverbal? Good. All right, we're strolling along here. Gender and sex soon to change, and again, I'm not sure. Dr. Gordon is working with me right now on sort of refixing this, repairing and mending this model that I'm presenting to you tonight. So gender and sex is soon to change. We'll keep it at that for now. Gender and sex, too, sometimes doesn't really play a role that much. I mean, it does at first, and it might at certain parts of the interview, but really, unless we look at gender communication real closely, are we really going to know what two females who are one's being interviewed and one's interviewing, Oprah and Lindsay Lohan, both women? What's that saying? You know, can Oprah be overzealous about it? Can she be emphatic? Can she emphasize her terms a little bit more? Can she be a little bit more stern? You know, I'd hate to bring this up, but I will for just to see where you gauge on this. If a woman, or excuse me, let me reframe that. If there is a man who is real assertive in an interview, sort of aggressive, a little stern, and a little bit pestering, kind of probing in a way. They're sometimes just seen as assertive, okay, or just men. If a woman does that, what do we think? Who said it? Say it again. Yeah, sorry, I didn't quite hear. That was on the camera. Okay. So yeah, we tend to think of women in that way as being bitchy, right? Okay, well, it's just they must have a bad day or something. They're being emotional. My dad said that about Diane Sawyer. He said, "Oh, I can't stand Diane Sawyer. She's on the news tonight." He said she's too emotional. And I was like, really? Are we really saying that? Said it right in front of me, didn't even care. But anyway, so many times can be excused from hostile questioning. Women and men do interact differently. We'll discuss this with Tannen. Women seem to be more skilled at and rely more on nonverbal communication than men. That's just, I think, taken right out of the text. And women are more expressive. And Tannen has written on this, many other scholars. Kristeva, a few other big communication scholars have written about women and expressiveness. I've written about expressiveness in the gay community. It's called the diva persona. I bring it back to when I was in high school and I used to throw hissy fits and tantrums. I would throw a diva fit. And my parents would be like, what is wrong with him? It was very expressiveness. Late night TV, do you think we could ever see a woman leading a late night TV show? Yeah.
Chelsea Lately.
Okay. I definitely could see her in a position, but let's just say channel CBS, ABC, NBC. Because we have Jay Leno on NBC, right? And then we have David Letterman on CBS, and then we have Jimmy Fallon. Sorry, Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Kimmel. Thank you. And then who else? We got someone else, right? Bill Maher. Yeah, he's on HBO.
Owning.
Oh, I owe you so much. Sorry.
Sure.
Nice job. We can talk about that later. Bill Maher is funny. Of course, if you don't agree with his politics, you might be a little offended by some of the stuff he says.
For sure offended.
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel bad for, just speaking as a non-political figure for a moment, which I always should be to some extent. I find that those Republicans who go on his show are really good politicians, because if they're not being paid to go on that show, people boo because they're pretty much all liberals in the audience. Of course, Bill Maher. He's New Rules. Rules. All right, New Rule. Yeah, that was a book I got once. All right, so I think. Sorry, go ahead.
He wrote New Rules made into a book.
Yeah, he made it into a book, but it's a little dated now. I got it back in 05, maybe 06. I got it my first second year out of college. Funny book though, and it's on audiobooks, which is good too. So actually, Joan Rivers took the late night spot for I think it was like 2 weeks or something like that. And then something happened. I think her husband committed suicide. It was a real tragic event. She lost her show. And when she scored one of the spots in a late night talk show, she called Johnny Carson, who is a competitor but a friend of hers. Johnny Carson, who ran the Late Show, I believe it was. And she said, Johnny, I got this job, and I'm competing with you in the late night spots. And he hung up on her. And she didn't understand what that was about. So she waited a few minutes. He called her just to hang up again. And Joan Rivers ended up failing. She wasn't allowed on NBC until The Celebrity Apprentice. Is there no seats? Are we out? Oh, geez. Do you want to come sit up here next to me?
Sure.
Do you mind? I feel terrible making you do that. I'll have to talk to Art tomorrow about this.
Okay.
Should be 25 seats. No, it's not your fault. We'll just, we'll make it work somehow. I'm sorry you have to sit in front of the class. Hello, everyone. So I think we could see a late night, but Chelsea, I think would be great. Her books are funny too. If you get the chance, yeah.
Tina Fey.
Tina Fey would be awesome. I didn't think about her. I hadn't thought about her at all. I'd only really thought about Chelsea. But I think Tina Fey would be great. I'm a big Tina Fey fan. 30 Rock. That is a hilarious show. I mean, it really is a funny show. If you just sit and watch it, if you're not into it, just give it a chance. You'll probably really enjoy it. Yeah.
Wait, are you saying Chelsea doesn't have a show? She does.
No, she doesn't have a show on any of the primetime networks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, she doesn't on, so like the big three. So
Right.
CBS, NBC, ABC.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have been a little more specific about that. This is the interview analysis model, also called the IA model. And I have a copy for you. And I'm sorry if I ruined trees and you don't keep a binder, you just have a laptop, and I just gave you some paper to take home with you. If you end up throwing this out, all I ask is that you find a recycling bin to do it, and not throw it on the floor, or try not to throw it in the trash, because if I see it in the trash, I'll probably just get more mad that, there we go. I'll get more mad that it's in the trash than in the recycling bin. Because I know a lot of you don't use paper stuff anymore. You know, a lot of you, it's all electronic, it's all on Blackboard, you know, it's all there for you to see. And the color's more exciting anyway. So there's gonna be tons left over. Oh, maybe not, because you didn't get one? Oh, awesome.
No.
Alright, I will briefly break this down for you. And again, this is in modification. Dr. Gordon's working with me on modifying it a little bit more. I'm presenting this to, thank you. I'm presenting this model to the New York State Communication Association in October. I'm teaching a bunch of scholars and professionals and professors this model, and hopefully to put Syracuse as a big name for New York State Communication Association. So what we have first to look at is our first element, which takes over this entire model. It's surrounding everything. That's because it's the setting environment. It is the totality of everything under the tent. Okay, so it includes all these things within it. Okay, it's all sort of context, it's background. When you're talking about setting environment, remember, you're mentioning, is it a televised set? Is it bright? In the Lindsay Lohan interview, you're going to see there are a series of windows in the back. Is that saying something? What kind of skylines in the back? So setting an environment is basically, encompasses all of this stuff that's sort of in the box. Then, relating to setting an environment, which is next, is topoi, or topic at hand. Okay, and remember, those are topics covered in the interview. What is being covered. Verbal interactions and nonverbal interactions I put as equals. That's because nonverbal in theory is supposed to say as much, if not more, than verbal interactions. I would like to get feedback from some professors at the conference about this and get some sort of feedback.
Each other, so essentially whatever you're not getting in verbal, you're getting in non-verbal.
I like that. I like that idea.
That's how I
I want to steal that. Okay. I'll give you credit though.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll give you credit. I might email you about that. Yeah, thanks. See? All right, and then finally, gender and sex. Okay, verbal and nonverbal. Verbal, what is being said, words being repeated, words being emphasized. I think in this interview, which is interesting for both topoi and verbal interaction, is the topic of drugs. And I'm not a drug pusher. I'm not saying go out and do drugs, but I'm saying what I find interesting about this interview is that Lindsay Lohan really is trying to kind of own up to her mistakes. But you be the person to determine whether or not you believe it or if it's BS. And that's what this is supposed to help you with. And then nonverbals, is she crying? Crying could be a verbal and a nonverbal, because again, that tissue is what really makes it like, oh yeah, that is a nonverbal, or that is crying. In a way. And then, of course, sex and gender, which lies across verbal and nonverbal. And again, it's within everything else. It's one of the micro aspects of interaction here. And again, I'm slowly transitioning this to sort of multicultural elements. I might be rewording it to a more communication studies framework. So that is the IA model. You will see this on your midterm, but it's going to be like, based off the model that we learn. Select an area and just address how Lindsay Lohan, was in the interview that we watched in class. Okay, it's not going to be like, what are the 5 sections of the IA model? No, I'm not going to do that. That'd be like you'd have to sit one night and just go through flashcards with this stuff on there. I'm not going to make you do that. That's rubbish. Any questions about the IA model? Under construction, okay, so I don't think it's really fair that I really test on it yet, so. Alright, Now what we're going to do is the actual interview analysis. There you go. Don't worry, it's big and weird. It's a big weird card. So we're going to watch the Lindsay Lohan Oprah Winfrey interview. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be assigned a element. Okay, and when you get that element, you're basically going to focus on that throughout the interview. Also, anything else interesting you see, you don't have to just focus. Say you get gender and sex, okay, in the assigned to you. You might have only 2 or 3 things to really say that might be really worth saying throughout the whole interview that you try to pick apart regarding sex and gender. If you find something else interesting, go to that. I'd like to discuss this. So Lindsay Lohan, for those of you that don't know, you'll get a little introduction. I know some of you might not know who she is or might not like her or might not be familiar with her. She's the interviewee. She's a singer, actor. She has had a sort of, quote, troubled life. Since like 2005, 2006, when she started making a lot of money off her movies. But Oprah will get into that. And then we have the master interviewer. I think is probably overrated in some contexts, but I think she's pretty damn good. And that's Oprah Winfrey. And you gotta give it up to Oprah. She is a great interviewer. I mean, she's very professional, she's very poised, she's very articulate, she's very knowledgeable, she does her research. She's, in this interview, you'll see she's almost acting like a mother to Lindsay Lohan in a way. It's very interesting how it's sort of she almost seems motherly. For those of you that know her, Lindsay's mom, Dina, who, again, you must think I'm obsessed with Lindsay Lohan because we'll be watching a Dina Lohan interview later. But she's almost being more of a mother to her than her actual real mother in this interview. I mean, if you've seen interviews with the mother Dina and you've been like, wow, she's a mess. She's definitely on something, or she's drunk, or something like that. But Oprah is very good in this interview. So she's a journalist, broadcaster, talk show host. She's been a talk show host since the early 1980s, before talk shows were really syndicated and big. Okay, so now we're going to have defined main elements. So remember, setting, environment, soon to be framed, top boy, verbal interactions, non-verbal interactions, gender, and sex. All right, what we're going to do now is count off by 5s. All right, so I'm just going to start off, and then we're going to then write your number down on your card with your name, please, and then that will be your element assigned to you. Okay, I'll say 1s, get setting, environment, top boy, 2s. All right, let's start here. Let's start with 1,
2, 3,
4, 5, 6, 1. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I screwed up too.
1, 2,
3,
4, 5,
1, 2, 3.
4. Wait.
Yep.
After?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Great. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Great.
1,
3, 4.
Awesome. Does everyone have a number? Sorry, I screwed up their Hannah too. I was like, yeah, let's keep going. All right, so now if you are a 1, will all my 1s raise their hand? Yay, you have setting and environment. That is the element you're looking at, so write that down at the top, on the top of your flashcard. By the way, you're going to be handing these in towards the end of the class tonight, so I will be collecting this for maybe a small participation grade. I think I told the last class that I was going to get 20 points for it, which is actually kind of nice. So, where are my 2s? Where are my deuces? All right. Okay. I think I skipped one more. All right. You are top boy or topics covered. All right. Number 2s. Where are my 3s? Wow. Okay. I definitely screwed up somewhere. All right. I can't count. You have verbal interactions. You have sort of the big chunky one. So whatever you see interesting or whatever fascinates you, whatever catches your eye, you do not have to write everything down. And try to enjoy the interview. You know, I don't want you to go crazy just analyzing the entire time. Bless you. Non-verbal interactions are my 4s. Ooh, fun. Okay, non-verbals. You're paying attention to non-verbals, gestures, anything like that. Anything not spoken or made to be noise. And then where are my 5s? Great, you have sex and gender. Feel free to look at another category if you want. All of you. I mean, for this activity, I'd like you to just write down everything you notice about your element. If you happen to notice something, I know it's hot and gross in here. Ooh, ugh. So just if you want to write on another category or element, just flip over to the other side and jot it down on the back, so that way we're not messing anything up. And then at the end, we might get through the entire interview. I'll collect these. If not, I'll still collect them. And then you can just finish the interview on your own. It's on YouTube, and we'll discuss it on Monday. This is the first thing, sort of a startup activity we'll start by discussing. And I'll hand back your cards. You can look at them to refresh your mind a little bit. I'll go ahead and I'll give you credit for it tonight, just as flashcards and what you have written down. Any questions about what you're doing? I know, I'm sorry. Okay, let's go. All right. There's a nice chunk of information about Lindsay Lohan before the interview actually starts.
This is a smartphone. It's very smart. This is a tablet.
Great.
It's really bright. That's
Thank
what
you.
technology does.
I'm sure you got it for your birthday.
I hate that.
Oh,
Come on, there you go.
My first movie, and I'm playing two dual roles. And I mean, it's really cool.
I was gonna do that. Is that okay? Will that creep anyone out? Okay.
The hopefuls to make her debut. America isn't lost, Lindsay Lohan. Her latest movie, Mean Girls, is a smash.